Thank you, pretend audience. Thank you so much. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome into Talking Sports at Work. I am your host, Derek Persley, and I'm just going to give you a quick heads up. I am not feeling great today. I actually almost called into work again today. I almost called in a day last week because I was sick, but today it was actually woke up with a friggin' well, I didn't wake up with it. Actually, it just hit out of nowhere. Like after I got dressed, this really, really bad headache, like a migraine, where I couldn't even like open my eyes or turn my head. And I took some medicine, and it lasted only about like the worst part of it only like 15 minutes, I think. But anyway, then it was still kind of lingering for a little while, and now it's like right there at the back of my head, like where I can tell like it could come back any second, but it's not there now. So let's cross our fingers and hope that it stays that way. But I hope everyone had a tremendous weekend. I did. It was a weird weekend though because um, it's rare to have a weekend during football season that doesn't include either of my teams playing. Um, but it allowed me to, just have a good weekend with the kids. I mean, we still watch a ton of football, obviously, and but not have my weekend and my mood and the outcome of the weekend dictated by things totally outside of my control, whether or not my teams perform well or not. So that was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, did have a good weekend. My son Jack, his team, absolutely dominated their opponent this weekend. It ended up, it was 21-0 early in the second quarter, and we hadn't even allowed a single first down on defense. And the opposing coach finally just said, that's enough. And it was in part because two of their team were late arriving, and so they were forced to start the game with only 9 players. So obviously that didn't go well for them to start, but even after those other two arrived, it was still very, very one-sided. And yeah, so my boys continue to roll now, and we've won 3 in a row. And we lost that first game, and it felt like we just really didn't know what we were doing at that point. And now I think everybody's got a better understanding of their role and our little system, if you even want to call it that. And at this age they're still just learning the fundamentals largely. So but I think everybody's getting, we're getting better every week, and we need to be, because this week we're playing a for real opponent. It's a private school, which is, excuse me, in Chattanooga, which is consistently going to be one of the best teams at every age group, all the way going up to, these kids, are gonna they've had every advantage, every opportunity with the private schools, private teachers, and the training camps and all that stuff, even at this age. So, well, I don't know. I mean, how much they do at this age, but yeah, they've been coached well. The expectations are high for that team, and so we're gonna have our work cut out for us this weekend. And if we can win this one, then we will definitely know that we are going somewhere. But yeah, we've got and we're gonna practice. We usually just practice 2 times a week because well, during the season, preseason we were practicing 3 times a week, but this week we're going to try to get 3 practices in preparation for this opponent, and hopefully, we'll see how we can do. But it was a great weekend. I also won a buttload of money on bets, and it's strange. It continues to be sort of the same thing as it was, as I've talked about before, in that whenever I think about it for more than a couple of minutes, I end up getting it wrong. If I just look at the schedule, look at the lines, look at what makes sense, and just pick them quickly, just what makes sense to me, then I win most of the time, the majority of the time. And it's the same way, honestly, going back to like, the little bit when I played poker, when I just had money to play with and wasn't really looking for, looking to make money off of it, but just trying to have fun. And then I won invariably. And But then when I went at it, like, okay, I need to try to do well at this because I need to try to make some money off of this, I would lose. And it's the same way with this. When I think too much about it, I just end up overthinking it and outsmarting myself and losing. And so it's the same way when I'm trying to like share bets with my friends. If I know that I'm going to do that, then I'll end up overthinking it because I don't want to, make them lose. Um, and that same sort of thing happened this weekend. I did a handful of my first round of bets, on the actually on Saturday on the college games. I just kind of did them without thinking about it, with no plans of sharing the bets with anybody, and I won. I ended up winning. What was that parlay I had? It was Nebraska to win by. I think I had. Man, now I can't remember. It was Nebraska with an alternate spread of like a 6.5, and who else was on there? Oh, Kentucky. Kentucky was a 16.5 point underdog against Ole Miss, who had not played anyone up to this point. I knew that was wrong. So I actually even adjusted it just to be safe and adjusted it to 21.5 because it still gave me great odds. So I had Nebraska, Kentucky, and then one other one. I can't remember who the other game was, but it was one other one. um, Man, that's gonna drive me nuts now if I can't remember who that was. It was Kentucky. Oh, Oklahoma. Oh, actually, no, I had four. It was Nebraska by like 5.5, Kentucky 21.5 plus 21.5. Oklahoma, they were an underdog against Auburn, and that one I just had a feeling, Oklahoma's better than people are giving them credit for, and Auburn has not lived up to expectations this year. So even at home, I feel like Oklahoma's really going to have something to prove, being, now in the SEC, and Auburn has been disappointing. So I had Oklahoma +4, I think. And then Mississippi State was a huge underdog against Texas. That was the other one. That was actually the first one that jumped out to me. They were a 37.5 point underdog. And I knew that was wrong. I mean, any SEC game, you can't give, even if it's Vandy, you can't give that much. I don't care if it's Georgia against Vanderbilt. I'm taking it if I see it's that much. And it ended up being, a pretty close game throughout. Texas pulled away in the fourth quarter, but still more than covered. So yeah, I hit that four leg parlay, which I rarely win 4 leg parlays. I can win them with 3, but I usually don't do 4 because it just seems like I lose. But this week, that one worked out, and then I'll dive into the NFL ones later. I didn't mean to go off on this tangent. I'm going to have a little segment about fantasy and betting later on in the show, but that I went down that road. So anyway, that was my Saturday, and then I also had Alabama winning. Now I'm not going to say I had any real logic behind that. It was mostly because they were at home, and because I just hate Georgia more than I hate Alabama right now. And I know that may be backwards for most Tennessee fans, but for me, that's just how I feel. And I also had them. There was a boosted bet that I think BetMGM had, where it was like plus 185 or something for Alabama to win the first quarter. So I put as much as they would let me on that. And yeah, obviously that one paid off really well. But we'll dive into that game and more here in a few minutes because there is a lot to talk about there, as well as, implications for the Vols and, well, all of college football implications with that game. We'll also talk about the NFL results and preview the Monday night games we've got coming up with the Titans and Dolphins, as well as the Seahawks and somebody. I can't even remember the other one. But anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll look at my notes and I'll be right back. All right, friends, welcome back. So, first thing we'll dive into is that Alabama Georgia game, which I'm going to be honest, I went to bed at halftime, and then I wake up to hear how this was maybe the greatest college football game of all time, and even Paul Feinbaum is saying, I know I might be a prisoner at the moment, but I've been covering the SEC 40 years. That may be the best SEC game I've ever seen. And look, here are my thoughts on it. You could say maybe that's the best half of football you've ever seen, but if half the fucking audience goes to bed at halftime, it is not a great game. I don't care what ended up happening later. Or it's at least not, yeah, it's not a great game. It ended up being a really good game, and really exciting and really close, and one of the maybe the greatest second half in recent history. But come on, if half the audience goes to bed at halftime, you cannot say it's a great it's a great game. Now, I did watch, all the highlights and everything, and man, it looked like, yeah, I definitely missed a lot of excitement. Georgia even came back and took the lead at one point and looked like they had all the momentum and, totally flipped the script from the second half. Because man, I'll tell you, when I went to bed, I thought, dude, this is gonna change everything. Alabama is going to jump up to number one. Georgia is going to fall probably all the way down to 6 or 7 or 8 if unless they can, really get something going in the second half, which I figured they would. I figured they would get some, make it respectable in the second half. I did not think they would roar back in the way that they did, but I did think that they would at least make it respectable in the second half. But after that first half, it was like, dude, Alabama is going to be number one after this, deservedly so. Um, and I even heard Paul Feinbaum say another thing the following morning, which was, and he said it sort of tongue in cheek, but he said, "Do they look better under Kalen DeBoer than they did under Nick Saban?" And honestly, the truth is yes. Right now, this team looks better than they did the last couple of years with Saban. And now nobody, including Paul Feinbaum or anybody, thinks that, Kalen DeBoer is even on, excuse me, on the same level in terms of being a coach and, actually everything. But right now, just the way it's worked out with this ridiculous level of talent on the team, still a Saban defense that's still in place, which is always going to be an elite defense. Maybe the best college quarterback in college football right now, in Jalen Milroe, and a great offensive coach. Yeah, this team looks like the best team in college football right now. And they look better than they did for the last couple of years under Saban. Now, that's, again, not that anyone in their right minds actually thinks that this team long term is going to be better with DeBoer than they were with Saban. They're not. He's still playing largely with Saban talent. Now, he will continue. He's proven that he can still recruit and, still keep them as, a powerhouse in recruiting. But Saban was one of a kind. They're going to eventually, start falling off a little bit. Now, I still think they'll be one of the top teams in the country under Kalen DeBoer. I think that he's proven himself already to be good enough for that. That, at Alabama, where you've got all the money, you've got all the resources, you're still going to recruit just because it's Alabama, and he's a very good offensive coach. They'll still be good. But, I think here in a few years, once the Saban talent, and the Saban defense starts going away, they'll probably, drop off a little bit. I don't think anyone expects them to have the just, consistent level of success that they had for, anyway. But right now, yeah, Kalen DeBoer has this team rolling and looking like the best team in football. And man, I'll tell you, my opinion about Tennessee's outlook for this season is totally different after Saturday than it was, all season leading up to that game. Because I was very confident that we would win. I mean, not like not definitive, but I was confident we would be able to beat Alabama at home this year and even at least give Georgia a fight on the road. Georgia looked vulnerable. Alabama, looks really good, but it's not Saban anymore, and we know that we're, at least on that level where we can beat them in Neyland right now. Our defense is elite, but man, that team looks damn near unstoppable. Now, that was in Tuscaloosa. If it had been in Athens, it may have very well been a different game. I mean, that it makes a big difference, obviously, in college football. And having the game in Neyland I'll be very interested to see how these next couple of weeks go leading up to that game and what the line is. Because before that game, you would imagine we were going to be a slight favorite going into that game. But after seeing what they did against Georgia, now it looks like Alabama's probably going to be favored in that game, even on the road. So, but then, at halftime, I thought, well, hell, we can go into Georgia and beat this team. They are more than vulnerable. But then after seeing what they did in the second half, it's like, okay, this is the Georgia that we thought they were going into this year. They're finally starting to look like that now. So it really changes things for us as well as far as our outlook. Those were obviously the two games going into the season that you looked at and you thought, those are our two most likely losses. But look, I was thinking about this earlier as well. As far as like the and I guess I'm going off into a different topic now, but we'll go ahead and roll with it. But anyway, well, let me finish up on the Georgia Bama thing. Just wrapping that up, what it means for college football now is Alabama deserves to be number one, and they are. And I actually pretty much predicted it after seeing the results. I said I think Georgia's going to drop to probably 5, and Alabama's going to jump to number one, and that's exactly what happened. Ole Miss dropped out of the top 10, so now we are at number 4. And we'll see how things work out over the next couple of weeks. But if things work out the way you expect them to, then the third Saturday in October could very well be number one against number 2 or number 1 against number 3. I don't know what Ohio State's schedule looks like between now and then, or Texas. I think, does Texas and Georgia play between now and then? I don't know. But Georgia, man, they've still got a tough road ahead of them. They got maybe the toughest schedule in the country this year because they had to play at Alabama. They play Tennessee at home. They're playing Texas. I don't remember if that one's at home or on the road. And they're playing, I think, at Ole Miss. I mean, they've got a brutal schedule. So there's a very real chance now with this loss that Georgia might miss the playoffs this year, even with it being a 12-team playoff, because Texas that's gonna be a tough one, and depending on which version of Georgia we get, and where it is, will play a factor. I do think Georgia is still a more of a complete team, and I'm also going to be very interested to see what happens when Quinn Ewers comes back healthy, because Arch has looked like everything they wanted him to be. But yeah, that's a whole other topic. But anyway, the third Saturday in October could very well be number 1 against number 2 by that point, or number 1 against number 3, just depending on how things shake out with Texas and Ohio State's schedule, and how well we perform. Which first, we've got a couple of games that we cannot overlook. Arkansas is better than people realize, and we're going on the road against them. And it really worked out perfectly for us, I think, that to have this bye week right now to give us plenty of time to prepare for that game, because that's that one sneaky game. That's the South Carolina game, it feels like to me this year. South Carolina, for whatever reason, just always would give us problems. They were the ones that ruined that great Hendon Hooker year. And they just always, for years and years now, have been that team that we should beat, but for some reason just always give us fits. And it feels like Arkansas could be that sneaky game this year. But it worked out really well that we have the bye week before it, and we don't have Alabama right after it, so we're not going to be looking forward to it. So, I think we can avoid the trap game in that way. But Arkansas is better than people realize, and that's not going to be a gimme game. And then after that, we host Florida, which, thank God, it's not in the swamp where we still can't seem to win for some reason, but we should handle them. And then I think, is it the next game? But anyway, I don't know. But I know we've got those 2 games coming up, and then I guess it would be the third Saturday by that point. But looking at our outlook, I know we've got now, I think it had us with like the 3rd best odds to make the playoffs right now. And, we've really got only 2 games on our schedule where we might be an underdog. We will be an underdog most likely going into Georgia, obviously. And with the way Alabama looked, we could be an underdog even at home against them. But even if we lose those 2 games, as long as it's close, we should still make the 12-team playoff. But you got to feel like we should win one of those to at least have a chance in the playoffs, right? Because if we can't beat either one of those teams, then we're going to have to play that caliber of opponent in the playoffs. But anyway, man, yeah, that's a whole other topic. So what I'll do is I'm going to pause really quickly, and then we'll then we'll just take a quick little dive into the Vols and their outlook and preview. Just go over how things have been through the first month of the season, and then we'll talk about some NFL stuff. So I'll be right. All right, friends, welcome back. So I hope you guys can hear the sound effects now. I haven't actually checked it the last couple of episodes to make sure, but with it. When I've had to do the episodes over the Bluetooth, I know you can hear them, but when it's in the AirPods, I assume it still plays it on the recording. I don't know. I hope so. But anyway, so looking at the Vols, going into every season, and I think probably most fans are this way, I sort of have a range of expectations. And you can't help but go through and look at the schedule and try to pick wins and losses and obviously you can't really do that. You're not supposed to put too much into that, but you can't help yourself. You're going to do that. And so you go into every season with sort of a range of expectations. And for me, it was like our realistic range of expectations right now. If things just go very poorly, if Nico struggles and he's not what we hoped, because that was the biggest factor. And if the secondary just can't hold up and the youth is too, the inexperience really shows up and maybe the defensive line's not what we hope, the defense doesn't take that step forward like we expected. If things don't work out, then we could win 8 or 9 games. That's the low end, right? And, I mean, I think 9 games was sort of our low range expectations, and 8 if things just really didn't go well. But if things do go well, I think we could win 10 or 11 games. So that was kind of the range of expectations. So it's all within, like 4, or well, I guess 3. But so far, it has looked like everything has lived up to expectations. Nico has been everything we hoped. I want to say that he's exceeded expectations, but I think the bar was just already so high for him, and there was so much hype that you can't really say he's exceeded them, but he has definitely lived up to them. He has been everything we hoped he would be. I mean, the accuracy, the deep ball accuracy, at every level of the field, the accuracy is just incredible. His athleticism, that sneaky speed for a guy that big. His decision making for a guy that young, he has been everything we hoped he would be. And what's really, I think, surprised everyone, including myself, is the defense. I expected us to take a step forward because we have just every year under Josh Heupel and Tim Banks, who I've been a fan of all along, even when the defense sucked early on and people were saying we should fire him. I was not one of those people. I said all along, I like Tim Banks. I think his system and this sort of aggressive play calling on defense fits very well with our offense. Because you can be aggressive like that when you score so many points on offense. I think we just need to get the right personnel in and continue to grow in this system, and that's what happened. That's what's happened, and now here we are. And I expected us to take a step forward. I did not expect us to be, one of the top defenses. I think a top 5 defense in the country right now. I think everybody would agree that right now Tennessee looks like one of the 3, 4, 5 best defenses in college football. The defensive line, which we knew was going to be good, has been unbelievable. I mean, and even without James Pierce, who's expected to be a top 2 or 3 pick, without him even really making a big impact so far that much this year, everybody else, Tyree West has been unstoppable. Amari Thomas continues to be that force in the middle. It's just the depth. The fact that we can just rotate 7, 8 guys and not lose anything. Like, still continue to just wreak havoc in the offensive backfield, no matter who's. I mean, especially those interior linemen with Eason and Norman Lott and what's the other one? Amari Thomas, and there's another. But just rotating those guys, rotating the edge guys. It's been unbelievable. I mean, it is the deepest defensive line in all of college football. I think I think that can be safely said at this point. And that's a big deal because that title usually goes to Georgia. But right now, our defensive line looks as good or better than Georgia, and I think it's deeper than Georgia's. Um, and that's been unbelievable. And all the questions really going into this season about the defense were the secondary because we lost, everybody basically. Every starter from last year's team either graduated or transferred, and we had just so much youth, so many new faces on defense that was, where you worried. So far, they have held up incredibly well. I mean, Gerard McCoy looks like an all SEC player right now, is an all SEC player right now. And the Ricky Gibson has been really good. The safeties, Turrentine, I mean, they have held up really well. Now, the thing is, the question is, you know, the defensive line has just been so dominant that it's made it easier on the defensive line. So the question is still out there. Once we play a team with a great offensive line, namely an Alabama or a Georgia, where our front can't just wreak havoc constantly, then can the secondary continue to hold up? That's still going to be the question, and that's going to be the question going into both of those games, at least the Alabama game, because I think they still won't be totally tested because the front is just so dominant. But once we go into those games where the offensive line will be able to hold up against, this elite front, and we can't just wreak havoc rushing four guys every time, then can the secondary continue to hold up? That's going to be the question. But so far, they have been excellent. The linebackers have been excellent. The receivers, and really all the skill position players have been everything and more. Brew McCoy looks better than ever this year. Deontay Thornton can actually catch the ball now, which he, for some reason, it just dropped everything around him prior to this year. Well, anyway, he's actually catching the ball. I mean, Squirrel White honestly hasn't been as big of an impact as expected, but it's just because he hasn't had to be. I mean, there's just been so many other weapons to go to. Dylan Sampson, it looks like an all SEC running back, this and the front, the offensive line has been outstanding so far. So, I mean, this looks like one of the most complete and best teams in the country. This looks like a deservedly, number 4 team in the country right now. So it's really, really exciting. But seeing that Georgia-Alabama game and seeing the outcome, it really makes me worry about the Alabama game. And seeing how Georgia performed in the second half, makes me a little uncertain about that one. But, that could be a prisoner of the moment thing as well because, we didn't play this week. And that was such a, big, they hyped that game up like it was the national championship. So we'll see, going to Arkansas is going to be another real test for us. It's not, people don't talk about it the way they did like at Oklahoma or, obviously Georgia or Alabama, but Arkansas on the road is going to be another real test for us. So if we can come out, and especially if we can come out and play our game, because that was the thing that some people weren't happy about in the Oklahoma game, but I actually loved the fact that we were really conservative on offense compared to how we normally are. I loved that because it showed we can win in different ways. It showed no matter who our opponent is or what needs to be done, we can do it. We aren't limited now to just being in this high-powered, high-flying, got to score a lot of points offense. We can dictate the pace. We can control the clock. We can run the ball. We can win games with our defense. That's something we're going to need if we're going to be an actual national championship contender. But if we can go to Arkansas and actually win in the way that, is really still our forte, I guess, which is, Nico throwing the ball, scoring lots of points and all that, then I think we'll feel really good. And especially if the defense continues to just be stifling and dominant, then yeah, things will be very good. But we've got to focus on that game, and then even after that, assuming we win it, even with as terrible as they are right now, we cannot overlook Florida just because it's Florida. It's just something about them. Um, but assuming we handle our business, we should be, undefeated going, and as will probably Alabama. I don't know what their schedule. I looked at their schedule, and I don't think they had anything that was going to be a real tough game between now and then. I can't remember though, but really they're going to be favored in all the rest of their games except for maybe at Tennessee. Um, but most likely going into that game, it's going to be two undefeated teams, two national championship, SEC championship contenders, and yeah. But we can't be thinking about that right now. At least the team obviously cannot be thinking about that right now. We got to be focused on Arkansas. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. I'm going to dive into some NFL stuff, but I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right. Okie dokie, friends. Welcome back. So, we've got a couple of Monday night games coming up, and I don't know why they do this. I really don't. I don't understand why they do this double header Monday night thing. I mean, why? I don't understand it. I mean, isn't the point of Monday night football and Sunday night football to feature and highlight one primetime game? So I don't understand this, but this is at least the second time that we've been part of one of these double headers in the last couple of years, and I don't get it. But it is what it is, and so we are going to be. It's going to be a rematch of a Monday night game from last year, where Will Levis led an amazing fourth quarter comeback, and we beat the Dolphins. Um, and it was really that game and the his first game against the Falcons that were his best games last year. That were the two games which really gave us confidence that he could be our franchise quarterback. So, let's hope he can do well in this one. But man, I mean, you guys know if you've listened to me that I'm sort of I haven't. I don't know. I've almost given up hope for the season, for the Titans this year. It's just what do we expect from them now? I mean, it's not impossible, obviously, that they will turn it around. Everybody still kind of expects the Bengals to turn it around, and they were 0-3, but they've also been, proven over the last few years that they can do that. They've been a playoff team, a Super Bowl team. They've got the chops to have that sort of belief. We don't. Um, and man, seeing Derrick Henry just go off on the Buffalo Bills yesterday was, I'll be honest, I was happy for him. I know probably a lot of Titans fans were feeling like, man, I can't believe we let him go, and God, he should still, yeah. But honestly, I was happy. I was happy to see him doing that well. I kind of figured he would still be, at least for one more year, still be Derrick Henry. And I'm glad to see him with a team where he can actually be utilized in the right way and actually win some games and be a contender, because he wasn't going to do that with us. We're just not, yeah. But I was glad. I was happy for him. And I hope he continues to dominate like that and continues to be that Derrick Henry. But right now with the Titans, it really all comes down to Levis. Um, I mean, every game so far, that's been the problem. He's leading the league in turnovers. He was the reason we lost the first two games. Now the Packers just beat us. It wasn't solely because of us beating ourselves, but he did throw another interception. I think it was even another pick six in that game. But even aside from that, the Packers still just won that game more than us losing it. It felt like the first two games we gave away, that one we lost. So, I mean, I don't know. That was even more discouraging than anything. because the defense up to that game had looked elite, but they didn't against Malik friggin' Willis. But here we go, against Miami with with no Tua, a backup quarterback, and we're an underdog in this one though. I mean, we're currently, I think it was like a 2.5 point underdog, even with them having a backup quarterback. So I'll be honest, I put some money on us to win, and we'll see. But man, if we don't win this one, then I will officially say it's time to give up hope. And depending on how Will Levis plays in this one, it will probably determine his future. And I know that seems maybe too early to say that with it still being September, but the fact that we lost the first two games because of our quarterback, and the fact that poor quarterback, we'll see. I don't want to start projecting or predicting what's going to happen, because if we win this game, then it really could be a jumping off point. Brian Callahan gets his first win. Will Levis has maybe figured some things out. They've got some connection. This could be this is going to be a big, big, big game for us either way. A win means there's still reason to at least be hopeful. A loss, and yeah, that's that. Um, I don't know what else to even say about it, really. It's because it's the same. There's only one reason why, that's the clear explanation why we're 0-3, and it's the quarterback. I've liked the coach. I've liked the play calling. The defense has been outstanding. At really every level. We knew the secondary was going to be better, but the defensive front has looked better. The linebackers, which you wondered about, they've been really good. And the skill position players are much better this year. And I know it's without Derrick Henry, but for a more modern, pro style offense, having Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears just makes more sense. The receivers are obviously, it's a significant improvement from last year. And the offensive line is better than last year. And I know that's a low bar, but they're right now at least, decent, at least on the left side. I don't even know who's going to be starting at right tackle this week. If they're going to try to put Petit Frere out there again, or if it's going to be Jalen Duncan or what. But that's still the clear weakness on the offensive line. But outside of that, everything has been pretty good. The receivers have been good. The running backs have been good. The defense has been good. It's the quarterback, man. And yeah, and so, with that being the case, I have started paying a lot more attention to Carson Beck. And, when Quinn Ewers comes back, who I like him. I've said I'm not a huge believer in Shadur Sanders right now, but, I still think someone else will probably emerge as, a top quarterback prospect over the next couple of months. But, yeah. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Titans. I don't know what else I could really say, but I'll take a quick break and we'll dive into the other NFL games that happened this week. Okie dokie, friends. Welcome back. So, we had an interesting weekend of NFL football this week, and it was interesting for me to be able to actually flip around a little bit on the 1 o'clock games, because normally that's when the Titans are playing, and so I'm kind of glued to it. Excuse me, glued to it. But the game that was the prime game that I think was shown at most of the country, we didn't get, which was the Packers and Vikings, because the Falcons were playing, and that's going to be the game on Fox when the Falcons are playing, because regionally around here. And then on CBS, it was the Texans and Jaguars. And I don't know if that was the national game or if it was just because it was an AFC South game, and so they put the divisional game on for us. I don't know. But I also, had on my computer monitor the Bengals and Panthers game, because I had bet on it, and I was keeping up with the Vikings and Packers just because I was interested in that one. But going back to just the betting thing again, really quickly. So I did have, I stayed away from that Packers Vikings game just because I wanted to see who's for real, and the Vikings were really number one or number two on that list, and that's actually something I'm going to dive into in a minute as well. But I did have the Bengals were a 5.5 point favorite. I had them in a parlay with the Rams plus 7.5 and the Broncos plus 8, which the Broncos ended up beating the Jets straight up, which was surprising. So obviously I won that one. And then I also, going back to the college games, I had another parlay later that was Arkansas plus 4.5 and Oklahoma plus 6.5, I think, and Alabama to win straight up. So I won that one as well. I won a lot this weekend. But again, if I try to share them with you guys, they'll lose. That's just how it is. I don't get it. But I won more this weekend than I have in any single weekend in my life. I mean, I'm not going to say the amount. Honestly, I don't even. I lost track of the exact amount, but it was more than I made working last week. I know that. But on the other side, my fantasy team just absolutely sucks. I'm 0-4 in fantasy now. But, and it's weird because I feel like I still have a really good team, but it's been like every week some little thing has gone wrong, or I've played somebody that has just done a little bit better. Like my team, I still feel like is really solid, but every week I've just played somebody who's had some great performers and really exceeded expectations and have just scored a little bit more. And that was the case again this week. Plus, I lost Rashee Rice, who didn't even get a single catch before he went down. But anyway, what we're talking about now is the actual NFL games. That Packers Vikings game, man, was, from just watching the highlights and the score, the Vikings obviously, jumped on them early and then almost gave it away there late. It ended up being very close. But I think the Vikings now we can say are for real, even with the fact that they almost gave that one away late. The Packers are a team that everybody considers to be a legit Super Bowl contender this year. And and maybe Jordan Love came back a little too early, but with the Vikings doing that to them and now being 4-0, are they the only undefeated team left? Because the Bills lost. Um, they might be. I can't remember. They might be the only undefeated team left. But it's crazy to see. I'm very, very happy to see Sam Darnold doing this well because I was a fan of him going into the draft that year. I thought, like most people thought, that he was going to be the number one pick, but he went to the Jets where they just destroy quarterbacks. That's what they do. And even after that, it felt like, he goes to Carolina, can't do anything there. And so Darnold's just not going to end up being anything. But now he goes to Kevin O'Connell, who's one of my favorite coaches, and he's been reborn. And he looks like the Sam Darnold that, we thought he was going to be going into that draft. And, so far, and I think everybody's kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop there. But, man, it's been 4 games now, and he has looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback for all of those games. And, good for him, good for them. I like the Vikings, and I think it's safe to say that with as well as that defense has played, and that with Sam Darnold continuing to look like a Pro Bowl quarterback and all the weapons, and that team is for real. That team is going to be in the playoffs. The Buccaneers are another team that I think it's safe to say now is for real. Now, I'm not saying I'm picking either one of those to be in the Super Bowl, but both of those teams will be in the playoffs. And like those were the two teams that it was just kind of like in my mind, it was like, let's wait and see on. Now, things could change. I know it's still September, but right now it looks like both of those are, legitimate, for real contending teams. The Falcons, managed to pull that one out. That was a very fun game. And the Saints were another team that you may remember last week. I said I'm still not sold on them going into their game with who was it they were playing last week? I can't remember even who it was, but I bet against the Saints and won. And it was because I just said I'm still not sold on them. And so they were another one of those teams that I was like, let's wait and see. Let's find out if they're for real. And I don't think they are. I still think they'll be like a fringe playoff team, but they're not a contender. Like, they're not as good as they looked for those first 2 weeks. The Falcons, on the other hand, are still a team that it's like, I don't know what they are just yet. Like, it still feels like they haven't played up to their potential so far. But with what they have, with the roster, they should be good. The Bengals are probably going to turn things around now. They finally got that first win. Um, the Rams are just, ravaged by injuries, and that's a shame because they were a playoff team last year, and a team that I think most people sort of expected to be on that level again this year. But they're now 1-3, and I just don't know that they can. Yeah, the Bears did beat them, and maybe they've gotten something going now. I've said I am not nearly as high on the Bears as most people were going into this year, but maybe Caleb Williams is starting to come along. I still think he is going to be really good, but I think the expectations were just too high for this year. But we'll see. And then the Jags, man, I don't know what is going on with them. They should have won that game. They should have won that game against Houston. They had. I watched a good bit of it as well, and it feels like, gave that game away. Um, and look, I said going into this season that it feels like in the AFC South, every team got better with the exception of Jacksonville. And, now it looks like we didn't get better, but we did. I mean, we still did get better. That just goes to show how bad we were last year. But I said every team seems to have gotten better except for maybe Jacksonville. I didn't expect them to be 0-4, though. I mean, this has been surprising. And I still have a little bit of affection for the Jaguars, even though they're a division opponent, because I lived there for a few years, and it just sucks to see because I like Doug Peterson, I like Trevor Lawrence, but they just cannot seem to, like, they don't have that ability to just close out games and just do the important things and crunch, red zone, third down, late games. That's when those most important, critical, situational football things and times and moments, that's what they are not good at. And you aren't going to win many games if you're not good in those situations. Um, and the Colts, speaking of the AFC South, Anthony Richardson is hurt again. I don't know the severity of this one. I don't know if they've even released it yet, but they did end up winning with Joe Flacco, who continues to seem like the ageless, wonder. I don't know what he's been doing you know, since he left Baltimore. But man, he's the best backup quarterback in the NFL. I think it's safe to say the last couple of years. But without Anthony Richardson, I don't know, man. I mean, is he going to be injury prone? Are they going to have to be looking for a quarterback again here in another year or two? I don't know. When he's out there, you see what he can be. But he's also looked more like what I expected him to look like as a rookie this year. Sort of a boomer bust player. He's made a ton of mistakes. He's turned the ball over a lot, but man, he wows you with some of the plays that he can make. And if he's, depending on the severity of this issue, that's really going to determine the Colts' future. And it sucks to see for them, but, hey, that's how it is. And I'm not going to cry for the Colts. I do not feel the same way about them that I do about the Jaguars. I mentioned earlier, the Buccaneers just really kind of handled the Eagles. I think they are for real, and it's good to see Baker Mayfield, another guy who I root for, doing really well. The Commanders destroyed the Cardinals, which they're 3-1 right now. And you may remember I said I am not totally sold on, I'm not as high on Jaden Daniels as most people are. But it looks like I was wrong about him. Like, he's played very, very well so far, and his team is 3-1. Now, are they for real? Are they going to be a legit threat? No. no, they've still got a lot of rebuilding to do, but they are already, I think, better than people expected them to be at this, beginning year of the rebuild. Um, 49ers handled the Patriots, which we expected. The Chiefs beat the Chargers, and that's one where you guys may remember I don't think I've ever bet against the Chiefs in the Patrick Mahomes era. I kind of did in this one because I had the Chargers plus 10.5. In a parlay, which was another one that I won. I had the Chargers, and what was the other one that I had? Three of them. I had the Chargers plus 10.5, the Rams plus 7.5, and the Bengals minus 5.5. And so I kind of did bet against the Chiefs this time, but I expected them to win the game, but I figured the Chargers would be able to keep it within 10, as they did. So I won that one, and the Chiefs. Oh, the Chiefs are the other 4-0 team. Yeah, that's right. They still have yet to lose a game, even though they still have yet to look like the best version of themselves. They just continue to find ways to win, and now it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen now that Rashee Rice is maybe out for the season. I heard them talking on Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk this morning about them probably looking for a trade partner for a receiver, and maybe watching to see how things go with the Titans and the Browns and these teams that maybe are disappointing so far and might be sellers. Maybe if we continue to lose, maybe we'll end up trading Hopkins to them. I don't think we're going to trade Ridley because we just signed him, and the cap hit would not be worth it. And anyway, I don't even want to get into that. I still want to. I don't want to think that that's where we're going to be by trade deadline. I still have hope, and we'll see if that hope can be either extinguished or can be a little bit fueled after this Monday night game tonight. And then the one bet that I did lose to this game or this weekend was I took the Bills over the Ravens. I really have been high on Buffalo this year, and I wasn't sure if the Ravens had really figured things out just yet, but they have. Yeah, the Ravens have figured things out, and they look like the team that everybody thought they were going to be going into this team. Going into this season. The Ravens are dangerous now. The Ravens are more than dangerous. They are one of the best teams in football, and they have finally figured out this offense now with Derrick Henry in it. And yeah, this team is going to be tough to beat. Anyway, so I think that was pretty much all I wanted to talk about with the NFL. Was that really all I wanted to talk about at all? Yeah, I guess that was pretty much it. So let's cross our fingers for the Titans tonight. Let's hope that Will Levis has a great game. Let's hope that the defense stands up and does not let another backup quarterback beat them. Um, but man, yeah, we'll see. But anyway, I hope everyone had a great weekend. I hope you have a great week. I might be back on here again tomorrow to talk about the results, depending on how the game goes. But either way, I'll probably be back again sometime this week. I know I keep saying it, but I'm eventually going to try to get back to doing the YouTube channel. I haven't done anything on there for a while, but it's just because I've been so ridiculously busy lately, and I've been working 5-10 hour days and with football practice and coaching the team and schoolwork, and it's just been too much. But I'm going to continue to try to get back to that eventually. But either way, I'll talk to you guys again soon, one way or another. I hope you have a great week, and I love you. Bye.